Now it has become necessary to expand into overseas markets. Simply put, China's domestic market has reached a saturation point. Even looking at last year alone, growth seemed to have hit a certain limit. There's talk that this year's growth might slow even further. The main concern here is that China is now adopting its dual circulation economic strategy. Despite these efforts, the projection still indicates a downturn.
Even with subsidies, the market has reached its limit.
It has reached the utmost limit now.
I never thought I'd see this day. Chinese cars are actually being sold in our country. Of course, they were being sold before. Commercial vehicles, for instance, were sold. But since they weren't targeting general consumers, they didn't seem like much of a threat. However, recently Chinese cars have started being marketed directly to consumers. You recently saw BYD in person, right?
Yes, I checked out BYD.
Do you think they're a threat? Or is it just a case of, oh, it's them again, nothing new? Which side is it?
Honestly, haven't we been underestimating China quite a bit? But now, it's clear that they are no longer a competitor to be underestimated. Yet, I can't help but wonder whether we've perhaps exaggerated the extent of their impact just a bit too much. When it comes to BYD, it's considered one of the two biggest players in the global EV market alongside Tesla. So when they enter the domestic market, there was fear that they would completely take over the EV market here. But when I saw the cars, they weren't the typical Chinese cars we expected. They definitely have the competitiveness to perform well in the global market. But does this mean Hyundai and Kia are about to be completely overtaken? I think we should observe a bit more before jumping to conclusions.
So is it like, oh, it's just them? Or more like, okay, they are delivering on expectations?
Yes, they are delivering on expectations.
It's worth the money.
Yes.
Okay, got it. They are offering worth the value.
Still, after seeing it in person, I felt a bit differently compared to just watching it online. It made me realize that we really do need to take them seriously now. The model they showcased this time was the Atto 3, a compact SUV from BYD. This car is not considered a luxury vehicle even in the global market. But since it's an affordable car, it fits into that specific market segment. However, when it comes to their higher-end models that compete with Tesla, those might be a bigger concern. The Atto 3 is a compact SUV. When we try to break it down, it is comparable to well-known cars like the Kona or Niro. In the photos, it looks solid and compact, doesn't it? The design appears to receive rather mixed reviews based on these images. The front grille and the way it smoothly integrates with the adjacent headlights are key design elements that BYD likes to call the dragon head or dragon face. BYD refers to the front grille and headlamp connection as the dragon face or the whiskers. They say it represents a dragon's whiskers flowing beside its eyes, but this design choice has been quite divisive among consumers. On the other hand, the interior is surprisingly impressive. It completely no longer feels like the kind of Chinese car that we're so accustomed to. They've skillfully utilized materials like leather, and the layered design is expertly crafted. Also, take a look at this display screen. Usually, the display is currently set up to be horizontally, but there is something quite interesting you need to check out regarding the steering wheel. When push the button, it turns 90 degrees. Now it aligns vertically. This setup closely mimics the vertical formats found in brands like Tesla or Volvo. It's specifically designed this way so that for streaming or infotainment purposes, you keep it positioned horizontally. But for navigation, you can easily switch it to vertical mode. Why? Because seeing more of the road ahead in real time helps you react much quicker and more effectively. It makes finding your way easier, so for navigation, go vertical, but for daily use, horizontal is best for convenience.
It doesn't seem like it's influential enough to capture the interest or attention of many consumers.
Not exactly. Yeah, you might be inclined to call it a bit of a gimmick, but rather surprisingly, the materials were quite decent. Usually when you open the door of a Chinese car, you notice a strong adhesive smell, and the synthetic leather felt slippery and less authentic. But this car was different. From the photos, it looked like it featured premium leather and top-quality plastics. In reality, it was just reasonable. Good value for the price. That's how it worked. Once this car is introduced to our local market, it is likely to compete with other models including the Kona Electric, Kia Niro, and the Kia EV3 as they're all within a similar size segment, offering comparable features. For specifics, the car is approximately 4,455 millimeters long, 1,875 millimeters wide, and 1,615 millimeters high, with a wheelbase of 2,720 millimeters.
Overall, it's a bit spacious.
Yes, it's slightly spacious.
It's definitely bigger than its competitors.
Bit bigger, and most importantly, it has a slightly longer wheelbase. The wheelbase is crucial because it largely determines the interior space, and Hyundai and Kia are very well known for optimizing their vehicle interiors. However, the Atto 3 does a great job too. The cabin space is larger than expected. Apart from this, BYD's Blade LFP battery stands out as a competitive feature, famous for its fire resistance, though fires can still occur. As I've stated several times, there's no such thing as a battery that won't catch fire. It received certification from our environmental department, indicating a range of 321 kilometers. However, in overseas, the reported range exceeds 400 kilometers. As expected, our local standards show it's slightly lower. With a power output of 201 horsepower, the most surprising thing of all is actually the starting price, which begins at only 31.5 million won. As I mentioned earlier, if we stay passive, we might get overtaken because BYD has introduced an extremely competitive price. At first, when BYD planned to enter the local market, they claimed they wouldn't participate in price wars. They aimed to position themselves alongside premium brands like Tesla. Seems things didn't go as planned, though. Perhaps during their planning, they realized their initial pricing wasn't competitive in Korea, so they significantly lowered their prices. I've heard this decision was made quite urgently. They initially intended to start at 31.9 million won. Initially, the starting price was set at 31.9 million won. However, after carefully accounting for various financial factors, including subsidies, they made the decision to reduce it by approximately 400,000 won. That seems to be the main rationale. LFP batteries usually don't qualify for significant subsidies from the government, so even with the limited aid available, you have the option to purchase it for about 29 million won. To ensure their product stays within the under 30 million price range, it looks like they have quite strategically priced it accordingly. From a pricing perspective, it's quite remarkable. The Hyundai Kona starts at 41.4 million KRW, the Kia Niro EV at 48.55 million KRW, and the Kia EV3 at 39.95 million KRW. Even with subsidies, those competitors can't begin with a 2 as the first digit. So, even utilizing all available subsidies, you can still purchase this at least 4 to 5 million won cheaper. For customers in this segment, price sensitivity is crucial. So if introduction of the Atto's 3 into the market becomes imminent, there is a growing concern about its potential pricing effect on the entire market.
Despite its very attractive and competitive pricing, a significant number of consumers continue to be hesitant about the use of Chinese manufactured batteries. Even though BYD's presence in the competitive market is growing noticeably, quite a few consumers still remain skeptical about the safety and trustworthiness of Chinese electric vehicles. There is an underlying mistrust, notwithstanding their growing prevalence and popularity. What have you heard around you?
Opinions are quite divided. Those who view Chinese cars positively say that Hyundai needs to wake up. KG Mobility is in big trouble. They have been competing with low-cost strategies, but now they have no more weapons left. Some people express this concern. On the other hand, others see it differently. They point out that BYD still doesn't have a long history of car manufacturing, whereas Hyundai, Kia, and even KG Mobility, if you count its SsangYong days, have a long-established legacy. Compared to traditional car makers, their skill in manufacturing, particularly driving dynamics, remains uncertain. A car isn't a microwave. One must ultimately need to drive it to understand. Regardless of the impressive battery specs or claimed mileage, if it's uncomfortable to drive, you'll consider replacing it right away. So there might be some differences in that respect, as some people suggest. Recently, a few journalists took it for a test drive to find out how it truly performs on the road. But this isn't a full test drive. It feels more like a brief spin you take around the block at the dealer shop. This kind of test drive won't allow us to fully understand the car's performance. The general assessment is that it's better made than expected, but it's only worth exactly what you pay for. Simply put, it feels like a car in the 30 million KRW range. That's the sentiment people are expressing now. But as I briefly mentioned earlier, the Atto 3 is actually a car that BYD made with the intention of selling in large numbers. As a result, it's a reasonably well-made car. There is a truly well-made car apart from this one. The ones that truly make significant waves in the automotive industry are those directly competing with Tesla's Model 3 and Model Y currently, which is Seal. This is part of the marine animal series, so this is a Seal. This is the most representative model of the series right now, and it looks very similar to the Model 3. Seeing it up close, you might even mistake it for a Model 3. They're that similar. Add a few white stripes, and you might confuse it with a Taycan. Let's not get ahead of ourselves with that comparison, though. Are we perhaps overhyping it? Looks like the Model 3. When you look at the Tesla Model 3, it displays that sleek, rounded design, right? Very similar. However, the interior feels quite different from the Atto 3 we saw earlier. This model includes a lot more new interior features, and this one also rotates. This suggests that BYD is highlighting the rotating functionality as a key selling point. When comparing the materials used in this car to those in the Atto 3, the difference becomes quite clear. It's evident that this car not only uses higher quality leather, but also minimizes the utilization of cheap plastics. This car, which was really made targeting the global market, starts with this Seal model. Atto 3 was initially a model for China's domestic market, slightly enhanced for broader appeal. In contrast, the Seal was designed from the outset with the global audience in mind.
So, can this car compete effectively with other models out there?
I would say this one is definitely something to be concerned about. It's notable not just for its look, but also for its strong appeal as a product. It's already doing exceptionally well in Europe. In regions across Europe, these cars, as mentioned, are often compared to various models like the Model 3, as well as the Ioniq 6 or the earlier discussed Ioniq 5. They're also frequently compared to brands like Audi and Volkswagen, yet they often receive higher praise. The reviews are excellent. People often say they'd purchase them if they weren't slightly more expensive than the Tesla Model 3. It's quite ironic because BYD cars are made in China and are now making their way to Europe. With tariffs being considerably high and extra taxes, especially in a country like the UK, these cars definitely come with a high price. A Tesla Model 3, as an example, is priced at about the mid-range of 80 million won, while the Seal is sold a bit pricier in Europe.
Nonetheless, they're still being sold there.
They are selling, but not in large quantities. So here they are trying to implement a strategy where they lower the battery range, similar to a standard model, in order to keep the price low. First, they released the long-range model, and now they have introduced a model that can showcase functionality, like a performance model. If this car enters the domestic market, it'll face competition from the Ioniq 6, EV6, and similar models. However, quite a few are viewing the Tesla Model 3 as its major rival rather than local brands. It seems similar, because it looks so similar, and as it's a car that is often compared in Europe, I think many people will be curious when it comes to the domestic market as well. How it might be perceived on our roads domestically is still something that remains unknown, and honestly, I think we should exhibit more caution with this model than even the Seal model. This car is in domestically now in EV market. Most of the automotive market trends have shifted from sedans to SUVs now. And among electric SUVs, the best-selling one is the Model Y. The car that BYD made to compete with the Model Y is this vehicle, the Sealion 7.
It's a Sealion, right? Oh, yes, it's a Sealion.
When you carefully look at the Sealion 7 alongside with Model Y, from the side, it looks so much like the Model Y that you'd almost think it's the same, but if you look closely, the interior has a bit of a different feel compared to the previous BYD models. It seems that BYD is diligently addressing the aspects where Tesla might fall short, and this concerted effort is clearly noticeable, even to casual observers, and it has physical buttons. Here, you can see there's a dashboard. Unlike the Model 3 and Model Y, which lack a cluster, since there is no cluster, everything has to be done through the central display. But if you look at the BYD Sealion, you can see that it actually has a dashboard. You can use both the dashboard and the central display for a more stable driving experience. And when it comes to materials, especially in the back seats, they used really high quality materials. Do you know how much this car costs? You'll be surprised. In China, this specific model is available for 189,800 yen. That would be roughly about 37 million in Korean won. The top model, which is the most expensive, is priced at 289,800 yen, a figure that converts to about 47 million won. Here the Model Y starts at 52,990,000 won in Korean market. Going for the top model will cost 73 million won.
There is a quite considerable price difference of nearly 20 to 30 million won.
Yep, with such a competitive price, they're set to make a major impact in our local market. But it's not just about the Model Y. At this time, the Ioniq 5 is the best-selling electric car within the Korean market. Ioniq 5 price starts at 47 million. Even with government subsidies, you still can't bring it down to the 30 million won range. Despite receiving reduced subsidies, this particular car can still be purchased in the mid-30,000 range. Assuming that's true, the competition with electric models such as the Ioniq 5 and EV6 may indeed become more intense.
So when exactly can we expect the arrival of the Sealion and Seal models?
BYD Korea now plans to launch these vehicle models domestically within this year, though the certification process may be a bit challenging. The timeline may change depending on the certification process. But the thing is, the certification process has been dragging on for 2 years now. After everything, they just managed to get Atto 3 certified. Nevertheless, with the insights gained from this particular experience, BYD is now ambitiously aiming to launch both the Seal and the Sealion by the year's end.
Frankly, it appears that models like Atto 3 is most likely going to be used as a rental car or potentially even for commercial purposes, considering compatibility, while models like the Seal and Sealion could potentially end up becoming popular choices among taxi drivers. Well, considering its size, it's perfect for comfortably carrying passengers. You mentioned the Seagull's competitors are the Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6, right? Those models are already popular as taxis, but what about the Kona and Nero? They're used as taxis too, aren't they?
Mini Konas and Neros.
Oh, so the Atto 3 could be a great choice for taxi drivers as well, couldn't it?
It's the companies, not drivers, deciding which taxis to select. For transportation companies, the cheaper option is always better.
They can start to profit much sooner.
There is a taxi-specific model of the Nero that Kia modified from the older Nero model. The vehicle sells well primarily because it's affordable. Its looks don't really matter. It's the low cost that makes it so highly appealing. Let's Support transport companies are trying to distribute 50 electric taxis to their fleet. They will leverage available subsidies and are aiming to boost overall profits. So they start comparing different options. Lately, there's been quite a number of comparisons made between the Atto 3 EV, the Kona, and KG Mobility's Torres EVX. They will compare the options and usually select the cheapest option. For many, it's really not about personal use. Instead, it's about finding the most cost-effective way to make money. According to experts, many believe the Atto 3 is going to become a popular choice precisely for this reason. My view is quite similar.
So, people might scoff who'd buy a BYD-written product. But when corporations are involved, BYD saw pushback as likely due to anti-Chinese sentiment. Even their executives were aware prior to entering the market.
There are many BYD representatives.
Korea's representative.
The CEO is Chinese.
Yes, the CEO.
The CEO is Chinese, but there are separate commercial and passenger vehicle divisions. But the head of that department is actually Korean. Moreover, the leader of the recently launched passenger car division came from BMW Korea. This person successfully introduced the BMW Mini brand in our country and therefore has extensive experience. They truly understand the imported car market in Korea. That's precisely why there is significant interest in how they are planning to sell BYD in this market. Therefore, it's the import car companies, more than the domestic ones, that are feeling the pressure right now.
If the domestic taxi industry starts to significantly lean towards embracing these newer versions of Chinese-manufactured vehicles over other available options, that could definitely pose a problem for Hyundai and Kia, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, they'd face a major setback. People are very interested in how Chinese companies will approach their business strategy here in South Korea. It seems they're initially targeting the B2B market more than the B2C market. In the B2B market, there's a significant focus on corporate fleet sales. As we mentioned, this includes sales to taxi services. Another key area is the rental market, involving cars for rental and car sharing services. In the rental market, concerns are very significantly increasing. This is due to the competition from major domestic players, such as Lotte Rental, the largest in the industry, and SK Rental, the second largest. Lotte Rental holds over 20% of the market share. SK Rental Car manages over 15%. Despite not originally being Chinese-owned, both companies are now controlled by Chinese capital. Affinity Partners during the previous year initially proceeded with the takeover of SK Rent-A-Car and then recently managed to acquire Lotte Rent-A-Car as well. These acquisitions have placed over 35% of the domestic rental car market under foreign capital control. I'm bringing attention to this because these companies genuinely need to expand the scope of their operations. As you know, PE funds grow and sell companies. To quickly increase revenue figures, the strategy should aim to prioritize boosting sales volume over operating profits. An effective way to achieve this goal is by tapping into leveraging fleet sales. Additionally, using Chinese cars instead helps keep costs lower. Despite their ongoing and consistent denials, persistent rumors continue to surface and circulate. There is a BYD dealer named Harmony Motors. Harmony Auto Group is the largest automotive dealership operator within the entire region of China. In Korea, auto brands like Hyundai, Kia, and Renault choose to sell directly through their own established networks. Imported car sellers utilize dealerships for sales. For example, BMW has networks such as Deutsche Motors, and Benz is aligned with Hansung. The reason is simply that overseas they don't ever sell directly. Dealerships are always involved. At present, Harmony Group, which possesses the most extensive dealership network in China, the world's largest automobile market, are in partnership with BYD. Together, here in our country, they're driving their business forward. Breaking into the B2C market seems to be an almost impossible. Think about it. People still harbor doubts about whether a Chinese car can truly compete with automakers like Hyundai, Kia, or even Tesla on entirely equal grounds. Any advantages but just price? There's this ongoing uncertainty, isn't there? That's what most consumers are feeling. As I mentioned earlier, penetrating the B2B market is crucial. When considering entry into the B2B space, the rental car market stands out as a key target. The major players, Lotta Rent-A-Car and SK Rent-A-Car, are now foreign-owned. For Affinity, our strategy involves greatly enhancing the customer experience in line with BYD's efforts to broaden their market presence. Lotta Rental Car currently owns the two leading car-sharing companies, including SoCar, right?
And which one is the other?
SoCar and GreenCar are top in car-sharing services. The owner of these services is Lotta Rent-A-Car. Car-sharing outfits distribute plenty of coupons when new models appear, like Tesla, with a special offer for 2-night, 3-day rentals. It's free for several hours. Free hours benefits were distributed. Very soon, BYD vehicles are set to hit the road as the latest entrants. Promoting with a phrase, why not try it at a location near you? Many free trial coupons will be distributed. It will be spread. When people receive these, especially those needing a car urgently, they might take it for a test drive, right? And if they find it satisfactory. If not, they won't return. But if they do, they'll be tempted to drive it again. Earlier on, I mentioned that Lotta Rental in fact owns the SoCar, right? Lotta Rental provides services not only on Jeju Island, but also in many other locations. Now imagine a person who's enjoyed a great car-sharing experience and afterward heads over to Jeju. They plan to rent a car for a few days and discover that renting an Ioniq 5 costs around 100,000 won. But then they notice that renting an Atto 3 is less than 30,000 won. For a long weekend, you can rent a car at just $10 a day, saving money instead of paying a high premium.
Use those savings for an even better meal, or maybe consider an upgrade for your hotel stay.
Experiences like these can dramatically change perceptions, greatly influencing the future consumer market and providing a solid foundation in the B2B market they are aiming for.
So are there any other brands that are planning to actually enter the market?
Right now, the brand making the strongest push into the market is Zeekr. Up next, we have a well-known brand called Zeekr. Have you ever heard of it? Zeekr is Geely's luxury electric vehicle brand, a name that might sound familiar. They market Zeekr as their premium EV brand, similar to how Genesis is positioned for Hyundai as a top-tier luxury exclusive brand. Take a look at these models here. This one is the 009, then the X, and over here is the 7X. These are their flagship vehicles. They compete internationally with cars like the Taycan. When it comes to competing in the luxury market, these models are often compared to the Model S and the E-Class wagon. Right beside them is the 009, which is an MPV vehicle model. It's similar to a minivan, but its interior is even more luxurious than the Toyota Alphard.
It's more luxurious.
The car embodies luxury with a geeker shell, but fundamentally, it's all Volvo. This model mirrors the Volvo EM90. The vehicle is incredibly high-end, with numerous videos from a variety of countries even considering comparisons to electric models produced by the prestigious Rolls-Royce brand.
Honestly, is there really a video of that? Come on, that's unbelievable.
I watched it too and thought, this has to be an ad. Nonetheless, Zeekr has been receiving a lot of positive attention. The models anticipated for release are the Zeekr X and the Zeekr 7X. The Zeekr X is a compact SUV with a premium. Small SUV yet luxurious. There's literally nothing comparable in the domestic market. So once it finally arrives, it's already expected to specifically appeal to young women in their 20s and 30s who are craving a really stylish vehicle. It's already causing quite a stir. The 7X is a mid to large SUV offering a solid electric option. It's the model with most demand. This is also a car in the same class as the Tesla Model Y, but it's been made much more luxurious, so there are some concerns about this. Even more so, in the case of Zeekr, they are already in the process of preparing to establish a local corporation in South Korea. They've efficiently laid down some groundwork here. A leader from BMW has been recruited to initiate and lead efforts. As a CEO,
when we first heard about Chinese cars being exported, though we didn't exactly give it much thought back then, upon reflecting on it, many believed then that the Korean market was simply too small for Chinese car manufacturers to find it worth. That was a common belief back then. Why exactly are these automobile brands from China so notably eager to make an entry into our market?
It's because they have reached a pivotal stage where expanding into international markets is now absolutely essential for growth. To put it simply, it seems the Chinese market has become quite saturated now. Until not too long ago, China's electric vehicle market was growing tremendously each year. But last year, that growth appeared to have stalled. Here's a quick overview. This represents the detailed car sales data from China last year. The total number of vehicle sales has been roughly estimated at around 22.58 million vehicles. Prediction shows 22.69 million with barely any growth. That's just a 0.5% increase, with expectations for only another 0.5% growth by 2026. Even in the electric vehicle space, termed NEVs, growth numbers peaked at 168% and are now slowing down. Furthermore, this year's growth rate is expected to decline further. The pressing concern at this current moment is regarding China's dual circulation strategy. Despite this policy, a downturn is still predicted.
Despite subsidies, they've hit their limit. There's no room left to expand.
It's full. Consequently, last year, the electric vehicle and new energy vehicle markets in China surpassed 10 million units. This year, with the market expanding to 13 million units, several believe that the limit will be reached by 15 million. Then they will need to expand globally. That's the reason the leading company BYD is now entering Europe. They're also targeting the Japanese market, but progress is slower than anticipated. Europeans appreciate electric cars, but often prefer familiar brands like Renault and Fiat, despite minor issues. In Japan, locals tend to stick with domestic brands no matter how many imports come in.
If Chinese cars were to succeed in Japan, it'd feel almost as if the whole world had turned completely upside down. You know the reason why? Remember when we had that huge winter Sonata craze? They tried to launch Sonata cars in Japan thinking, our beloved Yonsama is here, let's make it big. But it completely tanked. Japan is one of those nearly impenetrable markets. So if China ever manages to truly break into the Japanese market, then I would truly admit their influence.
Acknowledge it. We're in trouble. Quick, handle this. Reviewing Japan's last year's EV sales, Nissan tops the list. With models like the Leaf, Nissan is number one, yet it's a shocking lead, a drop of 44%. Their sales fell. Nissan led the list. Tesla secured second, selling 5,600 units, a 3% growth. Mitsubishi sales numbers have been almost halved, ranking it in third place. BYD was fourth. BYD sold 2,223 units. Meanwhile, Toyota has sold a total of 2,038 units. BYD now sells more electric vehicles than those of Toyota. Hyundai, however, managed to only sell 607 units. Despite a strong push with car models such as the Ioniq 5, they unfortunately couldn't manage to fully break through the market. Sales aren't good. This year, attempting for a turnaround, they've launched the Casper Electric. Nonetheless, BYD is still experiencing greater sales than Hyundai in Japan.
Here's the part I find perplexing. Nissan sold about 30,000. All electric cars, aside from Nissan, sell from 5,000 to 2,000 units. It's not entirely accurate to perceive this phenomenon as universal. This is because in Japan, electric vehicles aren't yet very common, so the sales numbers remain relatively low.
Nevertheless, if you examine the situation in Europe, the market share is steadily rising. BYD first entered international markets like Germany, the UK, and Norway. In these regions, they're no longer merely considered just a Chinese brand. Instead, they have gained significant recognition as a viable alternative. Especially in countries like Norway and other Nordic nations, they have electric vehicle adoption rates exceeding 90%. In those countries, there are no homegrown local brands. Because there are no national brands available, every car is imported, meaning that most of them compete on the same level, except perhaps for those like Mercedes-Benz and BMW.
Yes, there's no national bias in favor of any brand. They never had their own car brands to begin with.
Yes, that's why BYD is, how I should say, making significant strides there. It's almost like an escape route for them. Strong sales are further fueling their ambitions, and the strategic plan is to grow their presence and market share steadily across Europe. But why is there such a focused attention on Europe? Well, Europe has indeed been grappling with economic stagnation. Despite economic challenges, instead of relying on subsidies, Europe is pushing for a swift move away from internal combustion engines, warning of dire consequences if they don't. We're seeing a lot of pressure from these policies, aren't we? It's gaining momentum this year. Because of these policies, selling more electric cars has become crucial. So I have brought the forecast from Hyundai. Up until last year, Europe saw eco-friendly car sales drop by 1.9%. For this current year, they are predicting an increase of approximately 21.5%. In some of the cities in France and Germany, they have already started considering bans on the process of selling internal combustion engine vehicles. As a result, more consumers are being drawn to electric vehicles. You've likely heard of the Davos Forum. At the latest forum, leaders from the UK and Germany agreed that the shift to electric vehicles is unavoidable in today's world. Instead of just sitting back and letting China take over, they are discussing to provide subsidies to grow their domestic industry and expand the market size. While it's unavoidable that more Chinese cars will be on the market during this process, the market needs to grow in order for them to be able to buy German cars and, of course, French cars. As a result, Europe's electric vehicle market is set to grow significantly this year. Amid this expansion, Chinese car makers are eager to seize major opportunities. It's not just BYD making moves, there's another player called Leapmotor. They've quite recently teamed up with Stellantis, gearing up and preparing for a strong entry into the European market. They manufacture their cars in Europe. Since they are produced in Hungary, they can be directly supplied to Europe, which gives them an advantage in that regard. Stellantis, as many people know, have been suffering recently. That's why they are planning to collaborate with Remoto to boost their sales as part of their overall strategy. The continued influx of vehicles from China isn't merely a consequence of domestic market growth or increased European opportunities. Rather, it's significantly due to an internal transformation starting to emerge within the Chinese market itself. As I've mentioned previously, there are currently about 110 electric vehicle manufacturers in China. Goal is to trim this to nearly 1/10 its size. They're aiming to consolidate to about 10 to 15 companies, with merger talks already in progress. Rumors are buzzing. A particularly surprising story from last year involved NIO. Are you familiar? NIO? Among the top 3 notable startups which are known for their innovative and advanced technologies, NIO stood out, yet almost faced bankruptcy. They are currently experiencing severe financial challenges, sparking rumors that BYD was interested in acquiring them. These rumors caused quite a commotion in the Chinese market, although they were eventually debunked. Nonetheless, NIO's financial difficulties are true. Presently, there is a heated debate in China regarding who might step in to take over the control of NIO. There are several companies sharing the same situation. A multitude of companies face mergers, acquisitions, or disappearances, entering a turbulent era. However, BYD remains the uncontested leader across China's automotive sphere. Recently, some unsettling rumors about this particular company have started to surface.
What is it?
It's well known that BYD reported strong profits and solid sales figures. Presently, allegations have been made that these financial statements may be quite inflated, leading to serious doubts about their purported accuracy. There's a research firm, GMT, in Hong Kong that's been looking into this issue. Their research uncovered something troubling. BYD, it seems, has been withholding payments to its suppliers for a year now.
Not paid?
Yes.
They are listing it as a profit on their statement because it has not made payments that should be made.
Exactly. Just like when we issued promissory notes back then. Remember before the IMF crisis? Even then, we only issued 3 to 6 month notes, never a full year. It's like BYD is now essentially issuing 1-year promissory notes, but still struggling to make payments properly, which is fueling current criticism. This isn't an issue just for BYD. It's reportedly a widespread practice among many electric vehicle and battery firms in China. This situation creates quite a precarious financial condition, and if the financial bubble suddenly bursts, companies further down the line might inadvertently face the risk of bankruptcy. Their struggle to stay financially afloat could destabilize the entire Chinese electric vehicle and battery industries considerably. Critics are already highlighting the potential for a systemic crisis. This is certainly worth monitoring. Thus, Chinese enterprises can no longer solely rely on internal subsidies and government support. The prior strategy of offsetting accumulated financial losses by exporting products isn't sustainable as a long-term strategy. Ultimately, to safeguard their local market, they've hit a point where they can't sustain losses with the same approach. It's time to truly engage in business, meaning their only choice is to expand into foreign markets. That's why they are focusing their attention on Europe. They're also eager to enter our market since our country is an ideal testing ground. Success in the Korean market becomes a crucial benchmark for global success. It looks like these Chinese companies are gearing up to enter the market in large numbers to establish a strong presence.
Understood. So, As BYD has masterfully maneuvered to execute its highly anticipated and strategic entry into the competitive and rapidly evolving Korean market, it becomes essential to take a meaningful amount of time to delve deeper into the multiple significant factors that are genuinely driving this remarkably calculated and bold move. Undoubtedly, their substantial and notably historic success within the expansive domestic market serves to unequivocally fuel their confident ambition for determinedly pursuing this broader and more comprehensive international expansion. That wraps up today's highlights.